Hi, good morning. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about Project 2 because I've had a lot of questions. And so I want to first talk about what type of project this is. This is an ethnography. Ethnography means to observe. Oftentimes we would observe an entire community and sometimes focusing in on a couple of case studies or a couple of people. And what you're doing for this project is loosely doing an ethnography where you will be observing somebody, really focusing on the individual, somebody's participation within a discourse community. And you will be using observation, so you can actually observe the person. This part is a little bit optional. You can really focus on any textual data about that person's discourse community that they give you, and then focus on interviewing that individual. So you do need to be choosing a subject that is somebody that you actually know. So somebody could be, here are some examples, a friend who's in a fraternity, because a fraternity is a discourse community. A surfer or somebody in other sports. I've had a number of papers in the past on surfing. Any sort of hobby where the person is involved in that hobby as part of a discourse community. So hot air ballooning would be an example of a hobby that has a discourse community that surrounds it. If you have a parent who's in a professional career, like a lawyer, an engineer, or in the medical field, that could be a discourse community and their participation in that. A lot of jargon involved in that, a lot of language. Any sort of fan group. So if you have friends who follow a particular show like Doctor Who or Harry Potter, and they actually participate in activities surrounding that fan group. Another example would be Star Wars, if they go to Star Wars days at Hollywood Studios, if they watch the movies and they know the movies and they hang out with people, they dress up, that sort of fan group, that could be a group that you could examine that person's involvement. Any sort of gaming. There are lots of examples that you can do. You're looking for somebody who's participating in some sort of discourse community, and I'm sure you have somebody in your life that does that, and you want to be able to have access to that person so that you can gather some data and perform an interview on that. Because what you're doing is you're loosely creating a study. There are many different types of studies that we can do in academics. We can have qualitative or quantitative. So quantitative is where we are gathering data in order to analyze the numbers. Qualitative means that we analyze data in order to describe the data. And oftentimes nowadays, especially with qualitative data, we are starting with research questions versus a hypothesis. So you might be very familiar with research that begins with a hypothesis. Somebody states an educated guess and then creates a research study in order to determine whether or not the educated guess is valid or invalid. In this case, we begin research with research questions. And if we look down here, I've written a couple of research questions that we can start with that can guide this particular research project. What hidden aspects of the subject's identity is revealed? How does the discourse community influence identity and vice versa? What you're trying to do is discover how this individual with this person's identity, how that fits into the discourse community and how the discourse community influences that person's identity. And what you're trying to do is discover something that may not be obvious to that person. And I will be posting some examples pretty soon, so stay tuned for that on the discussion board. I'll be posting previous papers. When you start to write your paper, when you start looking at those samples that I will be posting later on today, you want to look at the general outline. We are putting this together similar to how you would read and see a research study. And in this case, you will not be using headers, but you'll have these general parts. You'll have an introduction that introduces the individual that will present your thesis statement. Then you're going to loosely have methods. You're going to say, who is your subject? What is their discourse community? And then talk about the kinds of data that you analyzed. So you will use language like, the subject of this study was so-and-so, this person participates in this discourse community, here's a short description of the discourse community, and then data was gathered about this individual through 2 interviews and a number of pieces of textual data, and then describe what that data is. It could be, if it's a parent who's in a professional career, it could be professional documents. If it's a surfer, it could be surfing magazines or other things that the person uses. If it's a fan group, then the text that they watch. So what are these, or Facebook forums that they belong to? What textual data can you get that shows this person's participation in the discourse community? The most of your paper will be results, meaning this is where you will present the data that helps to support your thesis statement. You will not, and I repeat, you will not present every single thing that you learned about this individual. Instead, you will be picking and choosing the results, the data that you found that supports the thesis statement that you have come up with. And remember that thesis statement is talking about this person's identity within this discourse community. And so that each paragraph will be presenting a little bit about that identity, the identity that you found, and you will be using discourse analysis to present that identity. You will say, through an analysis of this discourse that you discovered, you found that this person's identity is this within this discourse community. And then you'll have just a traditional conclusion where you draw everything together and again state that hidden identity, that unobvious identity that was discovered through your research. So very generally, this is Project 2. I hope that this video helped you out. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. Thank you and have a great day.